Now you say next let G and H be non negative. Let G n and H n be simple functions, a sequence of simple functions, right. So, there are sequences of simple functions such that G n increases to G and H n increases to H. So, what I am doing now is, so I am given two non negative functions, right. I am approximating these non negative functions from below by a sequence of simple functions G n and H n. So, I have G n increasing to G and H n increasing to H. Okay. Now, the question is, given two functions H and G, can I always find simple functions that increase to, say, let us say G is some non negative function. How am I guaranteed that I can always find simple functions G n that increase to G, right? It is not clear, right, but I will give you an explicit construction. So, this is possible. Okay. So, if you hold on a little bit, I will show you that this is possible. Okay. For now, just take that this is possible, we will show that this is possible little later, then we will invoke monotone convergence theorem. Okay. So, in this case, so then you will see, then you can show that G n plus H n will increase to G plus H, right. If G n increases to G and H n increases to H, then G n plus H n will increase to G plus H, it is fairly elementary. Actually, all these can be almost everywhere, it does not have to be for all omega, right, almost everywhere is enough. So, you have, so this is true, is not it. So, I have this. So, I have, we have integral G plus H d mu is equal to limit n tending to infinity integral G n plus H n d mu, right. Why is that true? Monotone convergence theorem, right. This is because of MCT, right, and this now I have H n and G n are simple functions. So, I have proven linearity. So, linearity among simple functions is already proven, right. So, this will split, right. So, this integral will so, this if you look at that, that would be limit n tending to infinity integral G n d mu plus, so I can take the limit inside, right. So, limit, so far I am okay, right. So, I have skipped one step. So, I have written this integral as integral G n d mu plus integral H n d mu and I am putting limits separately, right, that is always allowed, is not it, as long as the limits are well defined. So, now what happens? So, now G n is again a monotonic sequence of functions, right. So, this will converge to so this will give you what you want. This is again by MC, okay, monotone convergence theorem. So, is that proof clear? So, after the monotonic convergence theorem, proving linearity of integrals is a very simple matter, except that you have to buy that this is possible, right. You can always, for any non negative function g, I can find a sequence of simple functions which increases to g, right. It is possible to do this in many ways, okay. Given any non negative function g, I can always find a sequence of simple functions that increase to g, and I can do this in many ways. I will show you one explicit way in which this can always be done, one valid construction I will show you, okay. And this approximating a non negative function from below using simple functions is anyway very useful to compute these abstract integrals. See, remember that so far I have only given a supremum definition, which I told you is conceptually fine, it helps us prove a number of properties, but it does not tell you how to evaluate the integral, right. So far if I give you some, you go and integrate g of x is equal to x square over the 0 1 interval, you actually do not know how to do it except treat it as a Riemann integral, right. Now I will tell you an explicit way of computing it, okay. So is this clear? I am moving to the next topic, okay. Approximating a non negative measurable function from below using simple functions. Let g be measurable. Define. So, you are given some non negative function g, okay, in some measurable space. Now, I am going to define a sequence g n, an explicit definition of g n such that g n increases to g, okay. Just one particular construction, you may be able to do it in other ways as well, but I will give you one construction which always works, okay. We define g n of omega equal to I over 2 raised to n if I over 2 raised to n less than or equal to g of omega is less than or equal to, well actually less than I plus 1 over 2 power n, and this is for I equals 0 1 2 dot 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 till n times 2 power n minus 1, okay. And if g of omega is bigger than or equal to n, I define it as simply n, okay. So, this is the sequence of functions I define, okay. So, this is not, I mean by no means the only way you can do it, but this works, okay, this is enough. So, let me just pictorially tell you what I am doing here. Of course, if I have to draw a picture, I have to assume, let us say I have to assume that my space is R, all right. Let me take omega equal to R, and so I have some non negative measurable function, right. So, that is my g, okay, and this is my omega, and my space is real R, okay, and I have Borel sigma algebra on it. Let us say Lebesgue measure on R, just for the sake of concreteness. So, now what I am doing is I am at some level I am quantizing G, right, that is really what I am doing. So, I am looking at all those omegas. So, let me draw maybe a little bit, let me draw something like that. Okay. So, I am looking at some function. So, and I am considering, let us say I fix some I, okay, let us say I fix an I, and whenever my G of omega is between I over 2 to the n and I plus 1 over 2 to the n, for those values of omega I define it as the I over 2 to the n, the lower end of the interval, right. So, I am looking at some value I over 2 to the n, let us say that is my, okay, let us say this is I over 2 power n, okay. So, you fix an n, okay, I am defining the nth function now, g n is what I am defining. So, you fix an n and let us say you fix an I, okay, and you look at I over 2 to the n and you also look at I plus 1 over 2 to the n, okay. So, I plus 1 over 2 to the n will be somewhere here, let us say like that, right. So, that is I plus 1 over 2 to the n, okay, and you look at all those omegas for which your function is in this range, right, in this is the function takes values in this range. So, in particular for us it will be if you look at that as well. So, it will be, so that set and here there will be that little set and that little set, that guy there and perhaps one more, right here, that, right. So, you look at all those omegas where the function takes values between I over 2 to the n and I plus 1 over 2 to the n, okay. And in all these, so these are all the omegas where the function is in that range, okay. And in all these ranges you define the function to be equal to over there, okay, I over 2 power omega. So, here again the function will be here, I do not have a different color of chalk, but you see what I mean, right. So, the function will be over here and similarly here, okay. Similarly, if you look at I plus 1 over 2 to the n, I plus 2 over 2 to the n, you will again approximate it from below, correct. You see what I am doing here. So, in essence I am really just quantizing the function, but I am making sure that this g n of omega is less than or equal to g of omega, correct. And you can very trivially see that g n of omega is a simple function. Why is that true? So, I can in fact write, so let me write it this way. So, can I not write g n of omega as sum over I equals 0 to n times 2 to the n minus 1. See you get so you get n times 2 to the n of these subdivisions, right, and if the function is greater than or equal to n, you define the function to be equal to n, okay. That is one way to do it. So, you have so many summations, the functional value is equal to I over 2 power n, right, indicator of omega for which I over 2 power n less than or equal to g of omega less than I plus 1 over 2 power n plus I will have just one more term that says n times the indicator of omega for which g of omega is greater than or equal to n. So, is that a correct representation of my function, right? Agree with that? Now, this is already in a simple form, right. So, only thing I have to verify is that these sets are measurable, right. Are these sets measurable? Indeed, they are measurable, because G is a measurable function, and after all this set is simply the pre-image of the interval. This is just the pre-image of the interval I over 2 to the n, I plus 1 over 2 to the n, pre-image of that under the mapping G, and this is an interval. So, pre-images of Borel sets are F measurable. So, that is a valid F measurable set, and similarly that is a valid F measurable set. So, you have already written G n in terms of a simple function, explicitly as a simple function. Okay. So, now I have the following three things are of quite easy to show. So, the three so the first is that for each n G n is simple, correct, that we just argued. Number 2, we have that G n is less than or equal to G n plus 1 for all omega, correct. Why is that true? Because if I take a finer quantization, so if I increase n, I am taking a finer quantization, right. So, in that case I will take so this will split into 2 further subintervals, and I will have to, so if I split this further, so I will lower approximate in that little interval, right, and so the function I get, the approximation I get will be larger, correct, for a finer quantization. So, so that is true, all right. So, this you can show, and G n, so G n increases to G, right. So, if n becomes bigger and bigger, so my approximation will get better and better, right, because my G n of omega will be I over 2 to the n, but G of omega will be very close, right, it has to lie between I over 2 to the n and I plus 1 over 2 to the n. As n becomes very large, G n of omega will converge to G of omega for every omega, correct. So, I have a monotonic, so I have a monotonically increasing simple function, sequence of simple functions monotonically increasing to G, right, and this sequence can in particular be used in the previous proof of linearity, correct, with me.
Why the second point correct?
Oh, this one, let me draw a slightly bigger picture for. So, what I was trying to say is that yeah, no. So, what I am trying to say is that, so let me draw a slightly bigger picture, okay. So, you have a function like that, okay. So, you approximated, so earlier, so you approximated like that, right, G was approximated like that. Now, you have one more level of, so you are increasing n by 1 let us say, and so you will have, so that will split into, right, that is further split into 2. So, your I may be different now, but that is okay, but the functional approximation will now be, so here, so just to zoom in, right. So, I have, let me zoom into that a little bit. So, I had that, right, initially I had that. So, I said, so in that interval I approximated the function as that guy. Now, I am going to increase n, right, which means the width of each of these intervals used to be 1 over 2 to the n, now it is going to be 1 over 2 to the n plus 1, right, which means it is half as big as the earlier width earlier. So, it is going to be like that, right. And so, if you look at those omegas for which g is here, I will approximate the function with that, right, and here I will approximate it as that, right, correct. So, now therefore, g n plus 1 of omega is bigger than or equal to g n of omega. Okay. Now, so the value of I may be different in the two cases, that is okay, but you see the functional value is bigger than or equal to rather, right. So, g n plus 1 will be like that, g n will be like that, correct. So, you can just, if you just draw a big slightly bigger diagram like that, you will figure out why this is true, okay. And this is convergence, this is simply convergence which is also reasonably easy to show, okay. So, I have now by, so since I have all this, I can definitely write, so by MCT I have integral g d mu is equal to integral, well, limit of correct. Why? Because I have monotonic convergence, correct, but integral g n d mu I already know. Why? I already have it in the simple form. So, I can explicitly write down an expression for integral g n d mu, and by MCT. So, this is this limit is equal to the integral of g d mu. Okay. So, I am going to give you an explicit formula for integral g d mu in terms of a limit, right. So, which is nice, right, because if I give you a function to integrate, you can go ahead and evaluate the limit, right, which is an explicit rather than give you a supremum of a set of simple functions and so on, which you will never be able to compute in practice, right. So, this is a more practical way to compute the integral. So, integral therefore, integral g d mu is equal to limit n tending to infinity sum I equals 0 to n times 2 to the n minus 1 I over 2 to the n mu of, so mu of omega for which I over 2 to the n less than or equal to g less than I plus 1 over 2 to the n, mu of that plus there will be one more term, isn't it, plus n times the measure of omegas for which g of omega is bigger than or equal to n. Correct. So, if you evaluate this limit, you already have the integral of g d mu. So, this is an explicit formula. So, if your mu were to be Lebesgue measure, you will simply take the, so remember your this set, right, this set you will just simply take the Lebesgue measure, which is the length of those sets. Okay. If it is some other measure, you have to take that measure. Okay. So, in effect what you are doing, so let us for again continue assuming that mu is Lebesgue measure, okay, on R. So, in this case what you are essentially doing is you are chopping up the vertical axis, right. For Riemann integral you used to chop the horizontal axis, right. So, that is really the only essential difference. So, for Riemann integral you used to chop up the horizontal axis and look for the supremum infimum within those intervals, and you define the upper Riemann integral, lower Riemann integral, and compute the two, see if the two are equal, right. So, in this abstract integral or this Lebesgue integral, when mu is Lebesgue measure, what you are doing is you are just chopping up the vertical axis, the y axis, instead of chopping up the x axis, right, and you are looking at the measure of those sets for which the G lies in a certain range, okay, that is all you are doing. So, somehow just chopping up, so chopping up the other axis instead of the, so chopping up the vertical axis instead of chopping up the horizontal axis gives you a much more general notion of an integral. Okay, so I will stop here.